Okay, welcome back in. I'm going to continue my 32 and 32 series. Now I am looking at the Minnesota Wild. So last year, Minnesota finished with a record of 39, 34, and 9. They had 87 points on the season. At home, they were 20, 16, and 5. And away from home, they were 19, 18, and 4. So they weren't terrible, but unfortunately, they did miss the playoffs for the first time since like 28 or 2019, because I'm pretty sure they made it in 2020, 2021, 2022, and obviously they made it in 2023. Yeah, so for the first time in like 5 years, there was no playoff hockey in the state of Minneapolis. So for the Minnesota Wild, they would finish with where is it? The 11th. They would finish 11th. No, hold on a second. They'd finish 12th or 13th in the standings, either way, and then they would flip draft picks with the Philadelphia Flyers. So I think Philadelphia finished 12th and Minnesota finished 13th, but they ended up trading picks for each other. So Minnesota would draft. Hold on a second. Philadelphia would draft Jet Luchenko, a center out of Guelph, Ontario. So yeah, in my previous video, I talked about how Minnesota drafted. So Philadelphia should have drafted 12th, and Minnesota should have drafted 13th, but they traded picks. There we go. That makes more sense. So yeah, even though Minnesota finished 13th overall, they actually had the 12th pick in the draft, and then the pick that they should have gotten went to Philadelphia. There we go. Okay, now I get it. So now we'll take a look at the roster and see who's still there and who is not. Minnesota Wild roster. Here we go. So Caden Bankier is on the team. I don't believe Adam Beckman is there because his name is not on this list. Matt Boldy has 6 years left to go on his contract. After him, there's Travis Boyd, Graham Clark, Joel Eriksson Ek has 5 years left to go on his contract. Marcus Foligno, his contract did expire this past season, but he has signed a 4-year, $4 million contract, so he'll be with Minnesota for at least 4 more seasons. Frederick Gaudreau has 4 years left to go on his contract. Hunter Height is a member of the team as well. Ryan Hartman has re-signed a 3-year, $4 million, so he'll be a Wild for at least 3 more seasons. Riley Height has been added as a member of the Wild. Marcus Johansson has a year left to go on his contract. Reese Johnson is there. Ben Jones is there. Kirill Kaprizov has 2 years left to go on his deal. Merit Kusnutdinov has a year left to go on his contract as well. Vinny Lettieri is not on this list, so he may have been traded because his name is not here. They have added Jacob Loco, and I don't see Jake Lucchini here either, so there's a good chance both those guys could have left. They have added Michael Milan to their roster, as they added Pavel Novak, Liam Ogren, and Adam Raska. The name you see next is Marco Rossi. He has a year left to go on his contract. Mason Shaw is not here, so again, number of factors. He could have been traded away, he could have signed elsewhere, or he could still be a free agent. Who knows? After him, there's Devin Shore has been added to the squad. Luke Toporetsky has been added. Yakov Trenin, I'm pretty sure, played in Colorado last year, if I'm not mistaken. Sammy Walker is there, and Matt Zuccarello has re-signed a 2-year deal worth $4.125. And Liam Ogren, I don't think I have him on this list. I do, sorry. He has 2 years left to go on his entry deal. So a fair amount of people from their forwards are still returning for this upcoming season. Now looking at the defensive side of things. Zach Bogosian has signed a 2-year, $1.25 million, so he's coming back. Jonas Broden has 4 years left to go on his deal. Declan Chisholm is not on the list, so I have a funny feeling he has jumped ship to another team. Actually, as I say that, he is there. He has resigned. I apologize. Joseph Chetney, or Chetney, is a member there. Cameron Crody is a member. Next on the list for here is Brock Faber. He has a year left to go on his contract. Alex Goligoski has announced his retirement, so he is done in the NHL. Damon Hunt has been added to the roster. Carson Lambos has been added as well. Kyle Masters is there. Dakota Mermis, I believe, has signed with another team. His name is not on this list. John Merrill is returning. Jacob Middleton's returning. They're both on the last year of their respective contracts. Ryan O'Rourke, Jack Pert, and David Spacek are there as well. And the captain, Jared Spurgeon, has 3 years left to go on his contract. Looking at the goaltending situation, so Marc-Andre Fleury has re-signed for another year. This is guaranteed to be his last year. I think last year he said that was his last year, kind of like a swan song, but he has made it clear that he obviously wants to play one more year, and he is playing at least one more season. Troy Groshenek, possibly in their system, is on this roster. Philip Gustafsson has 2 years left to go on his deal. And to round out the other 2 goalie tandems are Samuel Halavej and Jesper Waldestad. So for the Minnesota Wild, it's going to be tough, to say the least, for them to get back into the postseason. Obviously, they were very consistent for a number of years, always making it in. But the problem with Minnesota was, even when they did make it in, it was tough for them to get out of the first round. Like, the last time they made it into the second round was maybe over a decade or almost a decade ago. This team just never seems to have that much luck in the postseason. The furthest they've ever gone in their history was back in 2003 when they reached the Western Conference Final, but unfortunately they lost to the Ducks in that matchup. For this upcoming 2024-25 campaign, I think they might make it in. They could make it in. They should make it in, but there's just so many good teams in the Western Conference. As I've said in many of my videos, I can see possibly 5 teams from the Pacific possibly getting in. And when it comes to the Central, I think Colorado is a lock, Dallas is a lock, and because Nashville has such an unbelievable offseason, they should also be a lock for 3 teams in that division. And then you can't really count out Winnipeg or St. Louis. Those could be some dark horse teams that could take a step forward. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that Winnipeg is a dark horse. They can be very competitive, and they've made the postseason 2 straight years. So there's a reason why they've made the playoffs. But St. Louis, who's missed the playoffs 2 straight years, they could possibly take a step forward. So for Minnesota, it's a very tough division to be competing in and to try to jump ahead of those teams that I mentioned to get back into the postseason. So I'm going to say no when it comes to the playoffs for the Minnesota Wild. Again, they're a very talented team, and yes, on paper, they should get in there. But just because of the success of the other teams in the Central Division, I think it's going to be very tough for Minnesota to overcome those teams. And like I said, to get back into the postseason. So I believe it will be 2 straight years where in Minneapolis there won't be any playoff action. Okay, as always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.